What's up, everybody? Welcome to your free GMAT prep hour. It is April 19th, 2020. I will be your host tonight, Reed Arnold. Good to see you again. Those of you that are here, those of you that are watching the recording, hello. I hope your GMAT is going well, and I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy in this time of quarantine. I have, as you might notice, gone a little crazy. I have shaved mutton chops into my beard because I'm so bored, which is, of course, a minor complaint compared to the direness of some of the times here. So it's a very frivolous thing to worry about, is being bored. But I decided to have some fun with my mutton chops, and I thought about, do I want to shave it for this free GMAT prep hour? Because I did this a few days ago. And I was like, do I want to shave it, or do I want to record this and be absolutely regretful weeks from now when I watch it? And I decided that, future Reed, I'm sorry that I did this. I know you regret this now, but it's too late. This is already out in cyberspace, and you are recorded with this facial hair. So we're all going a little wacky here. So welcome to the GMAT. If you are here today looking for other free options, you can take the first class of any of our online classes for free. No questions asked. That's 1/9 of the course. We have online classes starting all the time right now. Go ahead, jump on board, try it out, see if you like the style, try out a few different instructors. And I promise you, some of the things we talk about in class 1 are some of the biggest stuff in the entire course. You will walk away with something. So there's really no reason not to jump into a free practice class. Okay. Someone is telling me grow it back, grow. I assume that means for future Reed to grow back my mutton chops. So just know that that is someone's advice. They are all on board with the facial hair. You can also try our interactive on-demand course, our video course. It's a really great program, has won several awards. Basically, it's an adaptive class, right? It's a video, but if you get a question right, it'll take you one route. If you get a question wrong, it'll take you another route, much like the test does. So go ahead, try that out if you're looking for some free options. Okay. All right, so let's dive into today's lesson. What I really want to talk about today, and I'm very excited about it, is how to review reading comp and critical reasoning questions properly. All right, and I know some of you in this room probably have a whole breadth of experience studying for this test, but I think anyone will take some good advice from today's lesson. All right, I hear this a lot about verbal, particularly about reading comp and critical reasoning, that it's more subjective than the quant, and that's totally unfair. And the reality is that that's not quite true. And in fact, if you'll allow me to kind of misuse the word objective, verbal is even more objective than the quant. And what I mean by that is the quant, very often, there'll be the question, and often there's like, okay, here's the question, and then there'll be like a few good paths that you can take. You can take those paths. You might not want to take this path. That would lead to an incorrect answer, and this path would lead to an incorrect answer, but that's fine. You can take these two paths. And then in those two paths, that might lead to an incorrect answer, but then there's two ways to get to the correct answer. And then this way has a correct answer, and this way has the wrong answer, right? So like, for instance, if I come to a quant question, I can, maybe I can do algebra. And so this is the algebra path. And of course, I don't want to do this kind of algebra, that's wrong, but if I do this algebra, that's right. Or I could back solve, and if I back solve, okay, I can get to a right answer, and maybe doing this back solve is wrong because I plug in to the value to the wrong point or whatever it is. I make a mistake in the back solving, that would lead to a wrong answer. But maybe I can plug in this value, or I could plug in this value, and I have a few different options on how I get from the question to the to whatever the right answer is. All of these different paths, whatever they are, all the green paths, eventually all converge on the right answer. Right? And so you have some options often in the quant. Very rarely is there a question that has only one way. And I kind of think critical reasoning and reading comp is opposite. I actually think that in critical reasoning and reading comp, there is one path. There is one line of reasoning that gets you from the question that is asked to the correct answer choice. Okay. And so in many ways, that's harder. And again, it's not really more objective, but I'm going to call it more objective. It's that there's one objective path to go from the question to the answer, okay? And that's hard. It's hard to find that path. That's why these questions are difficult. And when you review a verbal question, a critical reasoning or a reading comp passage question, your goal is to find the path. Find the whatever reasoning that gets you from question to the right answer. Where do you go? And what do you think about? Why does someone who gets this right get it right? What are they thinking about? Okay. And then you might notice, you know, I went to a wrong answer path. Why was my wrong answer path wrong? Where did I go wrong and why did I go wrong? Okay. And it's pretty objective. That's the thing. It's a pretty rare question where I think it's unfair. A pretty rare, I'm not going to say never. There are a few questions in the book, the official guide or the advanced official guide that I've read where I'm like, that doesn't quite seem fair, or that doesn't seem like it follows the GMAT's usual rules. But I'm telling you guys, it's 1 out of every 500 questions. Almost every other verbal question I come across, I think it's, you know, this is objectively the right answer and these are objectively the wrong answers. And here's the objective reasoning that gets me to the right answer and the objective wrong reasoning that makes the wrong answer, or the objective right reasoning that makes the wrong answers objectively wrong. And so our goal is to figure out that path. And today what we're talking about is how to review reading comp and critical reasoning questions to find the green path and to identify the red path so that we can figure out where we went off path. All right, that's the idea anyway. Okay. When you review reading comp and critical reasoning questions, I want you to challenge yourself to avoid reading explanations for as long as possible. In fact, do that for any question you do. Anytime you review a question, don't jump right to the explanation, read the explanation, tell yourself it makes sense and move on. That's a bad way to review. In general, you want to be more active. But especially with reading comp and critical reasoning, the text is in front of you. The text is right there. And you just have to understand that since it's a standardized test and it's mostly fair, there is, you know, the text and the answer. And somehow you have that and logic and the answer. And that's it, right? So somewhere you can dig and find it. And I challenge you to do that as much as you can. So how do we do that? How do we figure out what is right and what is wrong on our own? And what we were thinking. And this involves, I stole a little cartoon here. This involves some self-brain surgery, right? I want you to treat yourself as a surgeon. You're dissecting the reasoning that you used or thought you used or used without even knowing you used it, right? Why did you choose the answer you did? Why was an answer tempting? Why is the right answer right? Okay, really cut up your work. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how to dissect your reasoning on a reading comp or critical reasoning question. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to analyze, when you review, you're going to analyze the passage itself, the thing you read, and your reasoning with the passage. Okay, and you're looking for that pathway, that green pathway I mentioned earlier, that connects the question that is asked, the passage itself, and the right answer. There's some logic, some reasoning that synthesizes all those so that the right answer is right. Okay. When you review, you got to ask yourself a lot, where, why, and how. These are the questions to go to. Where being, where in the passage do I find support for the answer? Okay. Why? Why is the answer right? Why are the wrong answers wrong? Why did I choose the answer I did? You do a lot of self-reflection here. The students who tend to improve most are the ones who can hold their work up to a mirror. And again, cut it up, dissect it, find the good parts and the bad parts. Okay, that's part of the dissection process. How does someone get this question right? What reasoning do they do? How do the test makers make the wrong answers tempting? Again, when it's an open book test, right? How do they make these answers tempting? You figure that out when you cut this stuff up. So far as I can tell, and again, I've taught this for, goodness, 6 years now, 3 or 4 with the company here. And so it always evolves, right? I always find something new or some other way, some new angle to teach something. But right now it seems to me that there are basically 3 places where you can go wrong in a verbal passage mistake, okay? And that's what you want to cut up. You want to find either, you know, did you misread or misunderstand or misinterpret or overlook details in the passage itself? That's the first place to look. Okay, did I understand what the passage said correctly? Did I deconstruct the argument correctly? If that's good to go and you feel like, yes, I did, then you look at this phase here. And in critical reasoning and reading comp both, I very much encourage you to, after you've read the question, before you go to the answers, to think on your own first. In reading comp, you try to predict what the right answer actually is. In critical reasoning, I actually don't say predict the right answer, but I do say try to think about what the right answer needs to achieve. And sometimes in reading comp, it's hard to predict the right answer too, but you can predict what the answer needs to achieve. You have like a thought in mind before you go into the answer choices. Okay, so when you review, you want to dissect that thought. Was it a good thought? Was it a correct thought? Or was it an incorrect thought? Was it subtly wrong? If those two are correct, if you feel like I feel good about reading the passage and I felt good about the goal I set, then I need to look at step 3. And that's where you look at the connection between the answer choices and the goal you need the right answer to achieve, or the prediction you need the right answer to match. And here's the thing about reading comp and critical reasoning mistakes. Anytime you choose the wrong answer, you actually make 2 mistakes at once, and they're different, and you need to look at them both, put them both under the microscope. One is that you chose an answer that is wrong, and the other is that you didn't choose the answer that is right. And I know that seems like one mistake, but it's actually 2 mistakes, because usually, or very often, you eliminated a right answer. There's something that pulled you towards one answer. And that means the right answer didn't pull you towards it. Or maybe you got the right, we're going to talk today also, if you get a right answer, but you were 50-50, or, it was kind of a guess at that, you got down to 2, and there's one that was right and one that you're not sure why it's wrong. You chose the right answer because you kind of guessed, but you don't know why that other one is wrong. Okay. Go ahead. I see someone is raising a hand. If you want to type in the chat the question, that's fine. Don't feel like you have to raise your hand. And I might, depending on what the question is, I will answer it now, or I might say wait till after the recording and we'll talk afterwards. Let me get back. Where was I? I was talking about, the 2 types of mistakes you make when you miss a question, right? And it's worth looking at both. Okay, why was I tempted by the wrong answer? Why did I eliminate the right answer? Or why did I almost eliminate the right answer? And I also want to be clear, I've separated these 3 as if they're all distinct, right? As if, if I made a mistake on 1, I didn't make a mistake on 3, or if I make a mistake on 2, I didn't make a mistake on 3, or what have you. But it's not, you can make multiple mistakes and have, a somewhat poor misunderstanding of the passage, a somewhat poor understanding of the passage, set a somewhat incorrect goal, maybe because of that misunderstanding in the passage, and, have a little bit sloppy reasoning on the answers themselves. There's bleeding here. It's not quite so segmented as I either made a mistake in 1, 2, or 3. There's often, there's moving pieces here. Sometimes, when you set the goal or prediction, you go to the answer choices and none of them really match. So you have to go and refine your goal or prediction, right? It's not quite so demarcated, but these are the 3 locations that I can think of where something goes wrong, where I don't get the right answer on this passage for this question. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through some reading comp passages and some critical reasoning problems that I have done before, some from that practice test on the Twitch, the GMAT, that you can watch in the free GMAT prep hours, where I take the verbal section live in front of you. And I picked passages that either I got wrong, or passages or questions that I got wrong, or where there's an answer that I was at least tempted by, where, I almost made a mistake. And I wanted to go back and review and figure out, why did I almost make that mistake? What was going on there? Okay, so that's what we're going to look at today. So I see a question there. It's about someone got stuck on a reading comp passage and messed up their time. Well, yeah, bail. If a passage is gnarly and gross, make an educated guess and move on. Just so you all know, if you struggle with verbal timing, if you guess on a reading comp passage 3 questions, there's like a 50% chance that you're going to get one of them right if you just guess blind, okay, 1 or more, okay? And that's pretty good odds on a really hard passage. So it might be worth the 8 minutes you get back. Just guess on a reading comp passage, get your 1 of 3 probably, and move on if you need to catch up some time. But yeah, don't let a single passage derail it. Guess and move on in general. Any question. Don't let any question or passage derail your time. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to pull up these questions. I'm going to pinpoint where I thought I made a mistake and explain how these mistakes look, how I found it, what I was thinking about when I went and reviewed these questions on my own. So first up here, I want you to take a look at this passage. Okay. I'm going to give you, let's say about 3.5, 4 minutes to read this passage and answer this question. So that's about 340. Go ahead, type in a guess if you have one, just to see where the crowd is. I have two D's so far, D with the question mark. Okay. A flood of D's. Flood of D's. Some C's, some A's. Some E's. Mostly, I think D has the gravity here. When you review a question like this, one piece of advice I have is to actually save looking at not only save the explanation, save the answer. Don't look at the right answer yet. Dissect, try it again untimed, dig in, see if you stick with your answer if you'd want to change it. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you what the right answer is yet, but what I am going to tell you is that when I did this question, I ended up getting this one right, but my first impulse was definitely wrong. I read the question. It said, which of the following would best explain why in a developing country some firms have raised their productivity and continue to pay low wages? Okay, so I was looking to answer this question. And so I went back to the passage. I found this. And so the answer that the first answer that kind of came to mind, the goal that I set for this question was something like, well, probably because there was worse infrastructure or less education. Okay. And it turns out there's no answer about infrastructure or education in the answer choices. So I got a little bit lucky maybe. But what I want you all to see if you can pinpoint is why this is wrong. Why that green, right? This question asks about how are wages low? How are wages low, right? And this says wages are low. So I felt pretty good about it. Okay, so I'm saying that the lines don't talk about productivity, but they do. Here's productivity right here. And the question does ask about a developing country, but are these not about developing countries? Maybe, I don't know. The question isn't comparing developing to developed countries. So someone says this is a comparison between developed and developing countries, and the question is asking specifically for within developing countries. That's getting pretty close, Sam. That's getting pretty close. Okay. So the question here, I see some good answers and some good thoughts dancing around. For the sake of time, I'm gonna move on here and kind of explain. Basically, guys, I misread or misinterpreted this green for a moment. This green is saying that there are some places where productivity and wages remain low because of a few reasons: bad infrastructure or low education or worse education. And the question asks for where productivity is high, right? Where we have raised productivity, that is a country that is developing. How are we still paying lower wages? Okay. And so this is when productivity and wages are both low. And the question asks for where productivity is high, but wages are low. And so this was just a misinterpretation. Now I made a few other mistakes, but mostly I just misinterpreted what this green was talking about. Okay, I would have ended up answering the wrong question. Might have been the right answer to a different question, but that would have been the wrong answer to. That would have been the right answer to the wrong question here. I'm not asked about where productivity and wages are low. I'm asked about where productivity is high and wages are low. So this was a situation where my misinterpretation of this moment almost cost me a right answer. Okay, and so when I was reviewing, why did I almost miss this question? I went back and I reread the question and I reread the part that seemed so tempting, and it clicked, and I realized, wait a minute, this is a difference in the productivity. Is it high or low? Okay, and here productivity remains low. All right, and usually, not always, but usually, if you pick a wrong answer and you felt really good about it, that's the worst, right? It's one thing to pick an answer and not really know. It's another thing to pick an answer and feel like I nailed it, and then you look at the answer explanation or the actual letter, and you realize you got it wrong, and you feel very gypped for a moment, right? Almost always what that means is that somewhere in the passage, there's a sentence that is very similar to what you were looking to what you answered, but isn't quite. It's either a answer to a different question, right? You're not actually answering the question that's asked, or the sentence just doesn't quite mean what you thought it meant. In this instance here, I kind of did both at once. And so when you feel yourself really gypped, go and find the sentence that really seemed like the support for your answer choice and dig in. Either you misinterpreted that sentence or it's not answering the question that's asked. Okay, but you want to dig in and really pinpoint that for yourself. So the right answer to this question is in fact D. And it says that some individual firms have raised productivity but kept wages low. And that says wages are determined by average productivity. So it's that sentence there. Okay. And I eventually got this one, but for a moment I was hoodwinked. I was a little confused. Okay. And I wanted to figure out why. Why was I confused for a moment? Okay. Very good. All right, let's try another one here. So that's just an example of misreading, misinterpreting what's actually written. Take a look at this one. It's going to be a little bit longer of a passage. So I'm going to give you a little bit more time. I'll give you about 4 minutes for this one, 4 to 4:15. Okay, friends, that's about 4 minutes. So go ahead and take 15 more seconds or so. Put in your best guess. Okay. Looks like D is getting a lot of the gravity there. Okay. All right, so I will spoil it and say that this is a question I did miss. I did miss this question. And when I went back to analyze why and what went wrong, the truth is that I felt really good about my reading of this passage when I read it. And again, that's always the first place you look. Did I understand what was written? Okay. And I felt like I understood it. I got the story, right? The way that this allocation of funds changed over time, what businesses did we support and for what reasons, what was the goal? Like I got it. I was on board with understanding what the passage was talking about. And then I read this question. When I read the question for the first time, and you can actually watch on the recording, I think my first question was when. It says the passage mentions which of the following as basic consideration in administering minority-based funding programs. And I think my first question was, at what point? The passage is talking about different times and different considerations. So how much, like I wasn't entirely like, what time period are we talking about? And I kind of went to the passage and I was like, well, it seems like at different times we're looking for different things. Like we wanted to look at first it was, supporting small businesses, and it was minority owned businesses. And then it was increase the number. So it was again, minority owned businesses. And then eventually it changes to creating and assisting minority owned substantive firms with future growth potential. And so I was like, I know I'm supporting small businesses or minority owned businesses in urban or rural areas with high unemployment or low income, or is it the minority owned businesses that have a lot of growth potential? I was like, I don't know. It seems like one of these things is the consideration we think about when we're deciding where to allocate funds. And so I was looking for something that said that. Something that said either, which ones are going to grow most, which are in areas that have high unemployment or low income individuals. That's what I was kind of seeking out here. And I went to the answer choices, and eventually I chose E. Okay. And the answer, as many of you so chose, is D. D is again the correct answer here. So E was wrong. And I chose E because of this highlighted, or this area here, where it says we're going for the firm's growth potential. I made 2 mistakes at this moment. See if you all can try to explain what mistakes I made in using that highlighted text to support answer choice E. Someone says it's out of scope, and that might be right, but I'm actually out of scope is often a correct reason for why an answer choice is wrong, but it's one that I actually would encourage you to not use, or more importantly, be more specific. When you think an answer is out of scope, try to pinpoint why. Why is an answer out of scope? So CHG, I think it was Cheng Hao. I only have his initials in the chat. Cheng Hao is saying that the question isn't actually talking about time, which is a good point. Very good point. You're on board. It's asking about a basic consideration. You all are hitting this well. So the first mistake was, yes, I really didn't think about what the question was really asking, a basic consideration in determining where to allocate funds. And so that should apply to all, right? That's like the first thing you ask at all times. Those are your basic considerations. So that's one problem. And I went to this one specific time. And so the reason the right answer is right is because we actually have a sentence that says, where is it? The word fundamental appears. Yeah, fundamental question is the one that I'm looking for. Since then, the fundamental question here. of who the recipient should be, right? Basic question, fundamental question. I just overlooked that. I didn't answer the right question, which is always something to look for. And here's the other thing is that like the orange highlighted text doesn't even quite mean what answer choice E says. So we'll talk about it a little bit here in a minute or two, misinterpreting the answer choice as well. And the answer choice here is not quite the same thing as talking about which entrepreneurs will succeed. It's talking about which firms have the highest growth potential. And I don't know if that's quite the same as an entrepreneur. In some ways, I guess it is. I don't know. But it seems to me like maybe it's a little bit different. So that's one problem, is that that's not quite the same thing as the orange text. The other thing is that just I did not really answer the question. Even before I went to the answer choices, I was hopelessly lost because I did not set a good goal for the answers to achieve. I wasn't answering what was the basic consideration. I was answering what are the considerations in these different time periods. And so I was, if it doesn't even matter what the answer choices say, probably, because I'm already lost. And if you don't set a good goal, it's going to be hard to find the right answer. Okay. Sabrina, B is wrong partially for the same reasons E is wrong, because that's not a basic consideration. I don't know if it ever talks about middle and high income minority entrepreneurs either. It talks about helping firms that have high growth potential, and it talks about helping minority-owned businesses in areas that are rural or urban or have high unemployment or low income, but it never actually says to assist middle and high income minority entrepreneurs. And even if it did say that, that's not the basic question. The basic question is, who do we give funds to? Then if we decide, if we say, okay, who should we give funds to? We should give funds to middle and high income minority entrepreneurs. Then the question becomes, okay, who are those? Where do we draw the line on high income or whatever that is? Same thing with answer choice E. Okay, which firms are most likely to succeed? That would be the question after we've answered the basic question. The basic question, who do we give funds to? Answer to that, the firms with high growth potential. Okay, now we ask which firms have high growth potential, right? But that's not the basic question. But the fundamental question, Elise, the fundamental question is who the recipients of funding should be. Only in one time period did they decide that the recipients of the funding should be firms with high growth potential. And at that point, then you ask, okay, which are those firms? Who has high growth potential? But that's not the first basic question. The first basic question is, who do we give funds to? Do we give funds to people who are struggling, to people who have high growth potential, to people where there's areas of high unemployment? Like, who gets the funds? And in many ways, this is like, duh, of course that's the first question you ask. It's one of those funny things on the GMAT where you realize, like, oh, yeah, that's the point of this whole article is they were deciding where to give funds, and they had different theories at different times. So in many ways, it's just like, what's this article about? It's a detailed question, but it's also about the main idea. But I had not answered the question. I did not come up with a good goal or prediction because I misinterpreted what the question asked and went to the time periods rather than the fundamental question overall. This question is I don't know, a mid 600s probably. Okay. So those are examples of the first two levels, right? One, did I read the passage right? Did I actually understand the passage, or did I misinterpret it? Two is, okay, if I did understand the passage, did I set a good goal? Did I actually answer the question right in my head before going to the answer choices? Now we're going to talk about well, this is all fun, but I like this next exercise most. Now we talk about if those 2 points, if I feel pretty good about them and I still get the wrong answer, what went wrong? And we're going to do now critical reasoning exercises moving forward. So we're done with reading comp. So it'll be a little bit faster here. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to answer this question, and we will then discuss. That's about 2 minutes. Start coming up with a final guess. And we have some questions about pacing in the chat. Force yourself to choose a letter even when you don't want to choose a letter. Okay. So this question we have some variety on. We're getting some B's, some C's, an A, some B's, some C's. Looks like B's and C's have the weight. Okay, which is fun. All right, here's what I want you to think about now. And this is the drill I would want you to do to really begin to dissect your critical reasoning or reading comp. You can do this with either question type. What I want you to do is, and I'll pull back these so you can see them. I want you to, if you have a piece of paper handy, a notebook or something, I want you to write on the left side of that paper the exact language of the answer choice you chose. What exactly does it say? And then on the right side of this paper, I want you to write out the goal that you think the right answer needs to achieve. And here's, I can't, 94 people in the class right now, I can't say, some of you might have missed the goal, which is, again, something you want to review. Did I actually set a good goal up front? But some of you will have set a good goal, and that's something to consider for yourself right now. Did I set a good goal? Did I understand what the right answer needed to do in this context, right? It's one thing to say, like, calls into question the reasoning. But I mean, like, what does it mean to call? What would it mean to call into question this reasoning? And I'll show you for myself what it would look like if I dissected my own work when I did this question. And what I want you to do, this is the fun part. If your goal is correct, and if your answer is correct, there should be a line of reasoning. Pretty simple, straightforward reasoning that gets you from the language of the answer to the goal. Either they mean the same thing, it's a logical equivalency. That's pretty rare in critical reasoning. It's more common in reading comp for right answers to be logically equivalent. In critical reasoning, it's more going to be a step of logic to go from the language of the answer choice to the goal, the correct goal. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how good that logic is, if that logic is correct. Okay. So I'm going to give you all here, I'm going to give you 3.5 minutes to do this. And that's frankly not enough time, maybe, but I want you to practice this. I want you to write out your answer choice and the goal, and write out, and I want you to write it out, the logic that you think gets you from the answer to the goal. Okay. So there's the passage. Go ahead, take 3.5 minutes to do that. Okay, friends, so that's about 3.5 minutes, which is a little bit fast for this exercise, to be clear. This sometimes takes, 5-10 minutes of really digging into how I was thinking. Because a lot of times your brain does this automatically. Your brain makes these connections without you really specifying it to yourself, and you have to go in with that scalpel and what is my brain doing, right? What's going on? Okay, let me tell you what my brain did. When I did this question, I chose an answer that was not super commonly chosen, although there were some answer choices. Some people thought about it or came to it. I chose answer choice E. I chose the thing that weakens this argument is that the species of insect that has infected cotton plants has never been known to attack soybean plants. And I can explain why I thought that was the case. Okay. First off, the goal. Okay. Ultimately, like the big goal of this weaken question, and the big goal of any weaken question is maybe the conclusion is wrong. And a lot of you were talking in the chat about this and saying basically what the goal was, but I want to encourage you just to be as specific as possible, right? Switching to cotton is a bad idea. Switching to all this, like, yes, it is a bad idea, but why in context here? We want to say that maybe switching to cotton will not increase their income significantly. I should maybe add significantly since that qualifier is there. Okay. Maybe switching to cotton will not be a huge boon to their income. That's the big goal. The answer choice needs to suggest that because we're weakening this conclusion. Now it's good to go general, but if you can, maybe it helps to come up with some specific versions of that goal. How could it not be a boon to their income? The cotton growing regions have been hit by this horrible insect infestation. Seems like a good idea to switch to cotton. Why is it maybe not a good idea? And the goal I had kind of come up with was that, well, who's to say that when these people grow cotton, the insect infestation doesn't take out their crops as well? That was my goal. And I think that's I think that's fair. I think that's a good goal. I think that would weaken this argument. If they plant cotton and lo and behold, they get ravaged by the insect infestation, well, your plan failed, right? And so I was kind of looking for an answer choice that achieved that goal, that the insect infestation won't also take out the crops in Ortovia, this made-up country. And I went to answer choice E. And it says the species of insect that has infected the cotton plants has never been known to attack soybean plants. And I thought, well, this place usually grows soybean. But the insect doesn't attack soybean plants. And so my logic was something like, because the insects don't attack soybean plants, insects could be in Ortovia and no one knows. Right, that was my thought. Maybe the insects are in Ortovia, but we just don't know it because they don't attack soybean plants. And that made me think, well, if they are, so if the insect is in Ortovia, if insect in Ortovia, this plan fails. And so that made me think oh, well, this makes me think maybe the insect infestation is going to take out Ortovia's cotton plants, and then this will not increase their income. So someone whose name in the chat is A, I don't know who A is, but A says that it didn't say. And what do you mean it didn't say? It didn't say what? What isn't said? So the passage, you're saying the passage didn't say that soybeans can't get infected. That's true, but that's okay. The passage doesn't have to say it. It says which of the following, if true. So the answer says it. There are, like, out of scope, this is part of my gripe with out of scope. Out of scope doesn't mean not talked about in the passage. There are many right answer choices where the right answer is not talked about in the passage. What do we think about my line of reasoning here? What's wrong? I felt pretty good about E. So someone says my goal is different than yours. That there might be multiple goals. There are multiple reasons why this big goal might fail. And if you had a different goal, that's fine. We'll talk about that too. But like, what's wrong with this? This seems like a pretty, this would, I think, I stand by this goal for what it's worth. I stand by the goal. Yeah, Jay's hit it. Jay says that, how do I know the insects are in Ortovia? And I don't, right? I've made a big leap in logic here. I have gone from this species doesn't attack soybean plants to the insects are probably in Cortovia or Ortovia. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. All you know is that they don't attack soybean plants. You can't just jump and say that that means they're probably in Ortovia, or that they could be or might be. I guess they could be, but could be, you know, whatever. Like, I need to say that they're probably there. I need some pretty good reason to think that the insects are there for this plan to work. And E doesn't give me that reason. I thought it did, but I made a big jump, right? I went from the insects don't attack soybean plants to, oh, they're in Ortovia and not attacking the soybean plants. And that's not supported. There's no reason to believe that. That's a jump too far. And this is one of the most common mistakes when you feel good about your goal. And again, I think this is a good idea. This is a good goal. But the answer choice does not achieve it. And this is what happens. You make a leap. It's basically confirmation bias to some degree, which is one thing the test is often testing, right? I was looking for this goal, and so I shoehorned answer choice E into my goal. I made it work, and it just doesn't. Okay. Now, C was a very common answer choice. Let's talk about C. We're running a little bit short on time, so I'm going to have to go through this one. I'm going to go through what I think is the reasoning people use to make answer choice C correct. Okay. Well, if there has been no increase in demand in cotton, then there's no reason to switch. Probably something like there won't be, like, prices aren't going to go up. Maybe you might think that even if you didn't know that for sure. If you said something like, no increases in demand in cotton means no reason to switch to cotton. Whenever you're doing this exercise, see if you can dig a little bit deeper. Ask yourself why. Why is there no reason to switch to cotton? It's probably because you think, even if you didn't specify this thought to yourself, that the price isn't going to increase. It won't be worth it. And so this doesn't achieve this goal, that the insect infestation might take out the cotton crops there, but it does say that basically cotton won't be an income boon, which is the big goal we're looking for. Yeah, if there's no increase in demand in cotton, there's no guarantee that the farmers will make more money if they switch. That's the idea. Okay. But here's the thing, C is incorrect. C is not the correct answer. And what that means is that this logical chain I've built isn't correct. Because if it was correct, I would get to this point, and that is the goal, and I could say that C is correct. If I can make a logical chain that gets here, C is the right answer. So this step, something's not right with it. Yeah, the problem is not a demand. The question is not, will demand go up or down? The question is, there's been a huge supply shock. We we don't need to worry about demand. I mean, I guess we do. I guess it would weaken the argument if demand dropped a lot as the supply dropped a lot. That would weaken the argument. But this doesn't say demand is going to drop. It just says it's not going to change, which, okay, supply is low. We have less of the good. There's been a infestation wrecking cotton crops. And so I don't need to worry about a demand flatline. I need to worry about demand dropping a lot. If demand drops a lot and supply drops a lot, yeah, okay, this might not be worth it. But if demand is steady and supply drops a lot, that means a price increase, which makes me think that, if anything, this actually strengthens the argument. This actually strengthens the idea that the price of cotton is going to be high. There's been no decrease in demand, and there's been a huge supply shock. And so this is one of those fun times where C is phrased, it's phrased like a weakener. There's been no sharp increase in the demand of cotton, right? That feels bad. But if you go through the logic, it's actually good. And so this is one of the things you want to look out for. Sometimes the wrong answer does the exact opposite of what your goal is. This says growing cotton will maybe be a pretty good idea. Okay. J, C is the opposite of the goal, because C says there has not been a supply drop, but there has not been a demand drop, but there's been a huge supply drop. And so that means the price of cotton is going to skyrocket, assuming demand stays the same, which C says is, well, someone also noted, I noticed someone in the chat mentioned, I just noticed that C talked about the past several years and doesn't talk about the future. And that's also a very good point. And so that's something you want to look out for too. Did I overlook something in the language of the answer? This says the past several years, and I'm talking about what's going to happen after this infestation. I don't know if that trend's going to continue or not. So that was a great, I don't know who said it, it was minutes ago, but it was a very good point. That's a detail that actually changes the logic of C and makes it even more incorrect. But if we assume that this trend continues and that it continues, that there won't be a drop in supply, in demand, but there is a huge drop in supply, then it's good reason to switch to cotton, because there's going to be a price shock. Okay. If you took this and said supply will drop, that's not what it says. It says it's been flat. No, Jay, the supply drop is not because people are switching. The supply drop is because there's an insect infestation ravishing the cotton growing crops. Okay. So the people aren't switching from cotton. It's just they've gotten their crops destroyed. And if demand is flat and supply is shocked, price goes up. Okay. So look out for details in the answer choice that change the reasoning. Okay. Don't take an answer choice and go from, there's a difference between demand has been flat versus demand will drop. Don't extremify an answer on your own. That's not what it says. Okay. And don't go against don't ignore what's in the passage, right? We still know that the supply is down. Okay. Dramatic increases in the price in cotton. Insect infestation in growing regions. These are all big mistakes. You contradict something that's in the passage or ignore what's in the passage. You overlook a detail in the answer choice. You make the answer choice more extreme than it is. Or you realize that in the logic, you actually do the opposite of the answer choice you first thought. Okay. C strengthens the argument. And the correct answer is B. Okay. And let's go to why B is correct. This is what you want to do. You want to trace the same logic. How do I go from B to the right answer? When I did this question, I got rid of B because I said B strengthens the argument. My thought was, oh, if there is a pesticide, or if there is an insecticide, then Ortovia's cotton crops won't get destroyed. Because remember, it would weaken the argument if their crops would get destroyed. All right, so as soon as I saw this, I thought, oh, well, if their cotton crops don't get destroyed, great, that's good for them. That strengthens the argument. They should grow cotton. What I didn't consider is that if this insecticide is developed, not only are Ortovia's cotton crops saved, everyone's cotton crop is safe, right? That was my fault. Actually, everyone is going to have safe cotton crops very soon, because we have this new thing that has been shown to kill this insect that's infected these crops, and it's environmentally safe, so we're going to be good to go. So if that's true, if everyone's cotton crop is safe and we all switch to cotton, it's not going to matter because the supply shock is going to end, right? And that's what this actually ends up achieving a different goal that says the cotton supply will bounce back quickly. And that means that switching to cotton is probably a bad idea. No, Elise, if everyone has safe cotton crops, it means the price won't go up. It means the supply shock ends. Okay. Yeah, supply and demand, which does show up in critical reasoning. All right. But more broadly just think about this exercise that we've done. Think about this argument dissection. We've really picked apart and really thought about the logical chain for why a wrong answer is wrong and why a right answer is right. I think this question is probably 700 plus, but I couldn't be sure. Okay. And so when you dig into an answer, when you dig into your work on a reading comp or a critical reasoning question, think about these places. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's a pretty good one. Did you, and again, you can do a combination of these. It's not one or the other or another. All right, there's often multiple things happen at once, but this is what you want to gauge for yourself. Did you misunderstand, misread, overlook details in the passage or the argument itself? Okay. Did you set a bad goal or prediction for the right answer? Was it incorrect for some reason? And then if you set a good goal, did you choose an answer that actually achieves that goal or prediction? If you choose the wrong answer, you make two mistakes, remember. And you want to think about, why did I choose a wrong answer? Well, I either misread or misinterpreted the answer, or I made an unsupported logical leap. I made something too extreme. I assumed something that I'm not allowed to assume that doesn't necessarily have to be true. I gave the right answer to a different question. I contradict what's given in the passage or the argument. Or if it's critical reasoning strength in question, I just reinforce what's already in the argument because that doesn't fix the reasoning. Okay. Usually that's one of the wrong answer choices. If you eliminated the right answer, I didn't type this, you might have misunderstood. Let me type that here actually. Did you misread or misunderstand? That's the same old game. Misread, misunderstand, misinterpret the answer choice. Did you just misread it? Usually what happens when people don't choose the right answer is that they don't follow the logical implications all the way out. And so trace those logical implications. Sometimes you might think that the right answer actually does the opposite. Like I thought the last question, I thought the right answer strengthened when it actually clearly weakens when I follow the logical implications to its end. Okay. And maybe I didn't realize that the answer choice actually it achieves a different goal than the one I thought of, but a nonetheless correct goal. And that happens too. An important note, thank you for asking this, Elise. I'm going to say this before we wrap up. What we talked about today is how to review questions. None of the work we did today is what you do during the test. You don't have time. For that, check other resources, read our manuals, watch other videos, watch me do the test. That's how you work during the test. What I'm talking about is how to review a question. And you might spend 20, 30 minutes doing that. when you obviously don't have 20, 30 minutes to do that on the test itself. Okay, so this today is how you review and dig in and evaluate your logic on a question. But I very much encourage you to do it. Don't just miss a question, read an explanation, and be like, oh, okay, that makes sense, and move on. No, what did you think? Why was it tempting? What reasoning were you doing without maybe even knowing you were doing it? What assumptions did you make? How did you misread? What did the passage actually say? You really dig into this, dissect it, and you'll get better at verbal reasoning. Okay. So friends, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this lesson today. Check out manhattanprep.com/gmat/classes for upcoming classes. We have several online courses starting all the time now. And again, in many ways, it's a good time to do it. Okay, it's all free. That first class is free. Come on board, check it out, get some big lessons in class 1. And when no matter what you do, when you review your reading, comp, and critical reasoning, do so thoughtfully and deeply. Don't just read explanations and move on. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. Thank you all for watching. I'll stick around now for any questions from the room, but otherwise I will see you next time. I think I have another one coming up mid-May, so I'll see you then. Have a good one, everybody. Be safe.